Hi, my name is John Saville, and in this video I want to talk about how I can deploy applications to an iOS device. It could be an Android device, could be a Windows device, using Intune being managed by Configuration Manager. And not only deploy the applications, but deploy these corporate apps in such a way that data cannot move from a corporate governed application through to a personal application. I want to sandbox those corporate apps. If I think about the device, I can think about, well, I have my corporate Word, I have my corporate Outlook, for example. And when I get data coming in, maybe it's an email, it's got an attachment, it's got a Word document. I should be able to open that Word document into corporate Word. That should be fine. But there is this wall around my corporate applications. If I had a personal application on this device, some other kind of reader, this document should not be able to flow into that personal application. If I had a personal OneDrive account, for example, I should not be able to save it to there. That should not be allowed. This flow should not be allowed. I want to keep the corporate data in the corporate applications only. Now, I may allow personal data to be used by the corporate application. If I have a Word document that's come into my personal email, sure, I'm okay letting that open in the corporate app. It's just it mustn't flow from corp to personal, but personal to corp, that's fine. So I'm going to show how we do that through the policies that I'm going to implement using Configuration Manager, but they're actually deployed through the Intune. So my environment will really look like this. I can think about I have an on-premises config manager instance. And what I do is I link that configuration manager on-premise to my Intune subscription. So I'm going to have a connection between them. And then my mobile devices, well, they're just connected over the internet. And this is important. It means that my mobile devices don't have to connect to CorpNet, any corporate networks. Maybe they're on a plane, maybe they're in a Starbucks, whatever. They're just on the general internet. So they are going to communicate with this cloud-based Intune service. That's where it's going to get the policies using the OMA-DM, the protocol, the Open Mobile Alliance, and device management protocol. Microsoft has a slight tweak on that. That's going to do all the configuration. But in my case, I already have SCCM deployed in my environment. So rather than have these different interfaces, I'm just going to link my configuration manager to my Intune subscription. And that's where it's going to push the policy, which will then push that through to the device. The benefit here is that I can just think about one type of management. And so my other devices that maybe are on my corporate environment, just a regular PC, well, they're going to be configured directly through Config Manager, while those mobile devices will actually go and use Intune. So a single management environment, but I can handle devices that both talk to my corporate network and those that are just out there on the internet. So let's actually go and see how I do this. So here I'm connected in my Configuration Manager environment, and the first step is to connect it to your Intune subscription. I've already done this, but you would just do add Microsoft Intune subscription. Now, to push software to an iOS device, I have to have an Apple certificate. So I'll do the create APN certificate request. I would save that request to a file. I would then click this link, which will open the Apple push certificate portal, load up that certificate request, and then within a few seconds, it will have the response. I would then download that certificate to a file. Once I've done that, I'm actually going to go to my Intune subscription and do configure platforms. This is where I say which platforms are going to support through the Intune. So I would select iOS. I would enable the iOS enrollment. And here's why I would browse and select that downloaded certificate. I can also add the device enrollment program if I need that. So I would click OK. And notice here I can also enable it for other platforms like Android. For Android, I don't need that special certificate. So with this done, I've now connected Configuration Manager to my Intune subscription. The next step, if I want to control data flow from my corporate published apps to personal apps, for iOS I need to add a special configuration. I'm going to go to the Assets and Compliance and Configuration items. Here I would create a new configuration item and just give it a name. I would select it's for iOS. I'll click Next. It's just for iPhone and iPad. And what I care about is data protection. Specifically, I want to say open documents in managed apps in other unmanaged apps. I want to disable this. This is saying if I had a document in a managed app, I'm allowed to open it in an unmanaged app. I do not want that. This is saying, hey, if I have a document in an unmanaged app, can I open it in a managed app? That I'm fine with. That's saying, hey, a Word document came in my personal email. I want to open it in my corporate Word application. So I'll click OK and actually go and create that. I've already done that. I have that policy created here. Once I have a configuration item, I actually have to have a baseline that contains it. So there's those rules. So I'd go and create a new configuration baseline. And all I do is I include that configuration item. So if I look at this one I've already created, I would have just done new configuration baseline. And within that, include that configuration item. So here are my compliance rules that are included. And again, for my supported platforms, I just do iPhone and iPad. Once you have this, you have to deploy it. So I would have this configuration baseline here. And I would say deploy. And I push it to a collection. Typically, this could be all mobile devices. Maybe you have a special, so it's going to be device collections. Maybe I've created a collection just for my iOS devices. But if you haven't, I could just say, well, all mobile devices. And click OK. So it's going to push that baseline to all your mobile devices. Again, I could look at that baseline. And here I can actually see the configuration items I have included in it. I can also see I've deployed it already to all mobile devices. So that's going to control that data flow. Now I actually want to push out my applications. So I'd go to my software library. Now Configuration Manager 2012 and above made a huge shift. Instead of pushing applications to a device, we now focus on offering them to users, and they will follow the user around. So when I create an application, I actually create different deployment types. There could be a deployment type that pushed it to iOS, one that pushed it to Android, one that pushed it to a Windows machine via an MSI if it's their primary machine, one that used Citrix Zen app if it's not their primary machine, one that used AppV. I have all these different options. But what it means is the user gets a consistent experience. No matter what device they're on, they're going to get the same apps following them. Now, before I offer this to iOS or Android, I want to create an application management policy. Now, all I do is I can just say create application management policy. I give it a name. I select the platform, iOS, policy type general. I could also say Android. And then I configure these various settings. Now, the key ones you tend to care about is allow apps to transfer data to other apps, only other policy managed apps. That's going to keep it to my corporate apps. Allow it to receive data from other apps. Yeah, but I don't care about the receiving. I don't want them to do save as, so I'm going to restrict that. And I can also say I want a PIN to actually launch the application. So not just a PIN for the device, when the application launches, they need to set a simple PIN for that as well. Now what I did is I created two different ones for iOS. One that requires a PIN, one that doesn't require a PIN, because I set these on a per application basis. Once you've created those policies, I created one for Android as well, I can now actually publish an application.
So here I would say create application. It can automatically import in the required information. And you'll see all the different types of deployment that are actually available. So you can see I can push an MSI, I can push a Windows app package, an app V package, a Windows Phone, iOS, Android, Mac OS X, web app, installer through MDM. If I had the add-in, I would see Citrix XenApp. I'll select an iOS from the App Store. All I have to do is give it the URL, so I could just do a search, Outlook iOS, and it will give me the URL for Outlook in the iTunes Store. I would just paste that in here, and then click Next. I could also manually enter the information if I wanted to. It's downloading that information, it knows what it is. I can enter some basic information about it. So I could say Microsoft Outlook for mobile devices. But remember, this is also going to be just a more generic application. Maybe I'm going to have an iOS version, maybe an Android. So maybe I just say Microsoft Outlook. I've already got this, which is why it's complaining it has to be unique. And now it would actually go and create this. I'm going to cancel it because I do have it already. And you can see here, if I look at my Outlook, I actually have two deployment types. I actually created one for iOS and one for Android. And these are both taking it from their respective stores. If I do edit on that, I can just see that URL and I could add particular requirements. Once I have this, the next thing is to just deploy it. So I want to deploy it to users. I'm not deploying it to devices, it's actually to particular groups of users. So my collection, I'm just going to say all users, but it could be a more restricted group. If you have that in your organization, if there's a line of business application, I could select a particular user collection I have in my SCCM environment. It's complaining it's already been deployed, so I'll select a different group. And the only thing I really care about here is the application management policy. I have to say which policy those ones I created should be used for the application. Now what I have in my environment is for the iOS, I require the pin for Outlook, but I don't require it for Word. So what I've done is I've deployed Outlook, I've deployed PowerPoint, and I've deployed Word. So you can see I actually have deployed those three. And that's it. Configuration Manager will push that through to Intune. And Intune is now ready to actually enforce those on the various mobile devices that actually enroll with Intune. So I'm doing all the management through Configuration Manager, but the actual application will be done through Intune. So let's look at now what is the experience on the actual iOS device. So now I'm on that iOS device. This is a fairly new machine. All I've done is install the personal OneDrive, Google Docs and Dropbox. So some personal applications. And kind of what I want to demonstrate is right now if I went into this OneDrive, if I went and looked, for example, at documents, I have a Word document in here. And I would have options to go and open this up in various applications. I could send it to personal email, to messages. Over here I could open another application and I could see Google Docs. I could say copy to Dropbox. There's no locks on this. It's free to flow wherever it wants to. So what I need to do first is install the Company Portal application from the App Store. So I search for Company Portal. There it is, and I'll go through that installation. That's going to enable me to easily enroll this device with my company. So now that's installed. I see it, so I'll launch that application. And I'll need to authenticate with my work or school account. So I would go through that logon. and hit sign in. This enables the corporate portal to go and talk to Intune, find the subscription I should link to based on my work or school account. It's then going to tell me I'm not enrolled. So it's going to say, hey, if you want this, you need to enroll your device and then make sure I'm meeting the various compliance. So I'm going to say begin. It's telling me exactly what it's going to do. Hit continue, continue, obviously reading these very thoroughly, enroll. So it's going to go and add a management certificate to this device. That's going to enable it to be managed by Intune. So it's going through that enrollment process. It's added that certificate. So I want to install that. Enter in a code. Install the profile. And it's now making this a managed device. So I want to install this. Trust. And I'll hit done. So now my device is enrolled into my Intune and actually into my Azure AD as well. Now it needs to meet the compliance requirements. Let's continue again. Feel free to do something else and check back later if you've got something busy to do, but it really doesn't take very long. And it's done. So at this point, I want to go and install some applications, my company apps. So I'm going to go to Company Applications. I'm clicking on that big square. It's going to open up the Browse Apps portal. And now I can add the applications that are available on this platform. So yeah, I want Outlook. Install that. And also, I'm going to take Word and I'm going to take PowerPoint. So I'm going to repeat this process for all of these. And it's saying pending sync. It's waiting for me to force a synchronization between this iOS device and also Intune. So install. And it does it in the background as well, or I can actually force that process. I can now see the apps are installing in the background. I'll just let that finish. Now while that's happening, I'll actually go to Outlook. Now remember, this is a corporate managed application now. It was pushed as part of my Intune. It's going to have those policies. It's telling me the IT department is helping me protect company data in that application. And for this application, I said I want a PIN. So I didn't for Word or PowerPoint, but I did for this. So it's going to make me set a PIN. So I need to go and actually create a PIN for this application. So I type in a PIN and I confirm it. And now I'm in the application. So when I launch this, it's going to ask for that PIN. So now I go through now. I could actually push this configuration as part of the Intune, or I can just have it so the user manually sets this up. In most environments, you're actually probably going to want to automate this process. But this gives me a second to let the Word actually finish completing. Have to go through and enter my credentials. And now it should actually go and connect to my inbox. Now remember, this is a corporate app, so data should not be able to flow outside of the other corporate applications. So I've now got that email in my inbox, and also I can see Word and PowerPoint have completed installation. So if I select this, I can see it's got a Word document. So if I select this, it's going to open up just in the preview. And now, what can I do with this? So here, open in, it's only showing me Word. It's not showing me Google Docs. It's not going to let me do other types of activities that were normally available to a Word document. It's protecting it. If I do save, I can only save to my OneDrive for Business. It's not going to let me save it to something else. So it's making sure I'm keeping it within the other corporate applications. Now I can open it in Word because that's a corporate app. That's going to let me do that just fine. Let's open it in Word for a second. Again, it's telling me it's being protected. It's activating because it's the first time it's been used. And that's opening that document. Great. But there's something else it's going to do. So we're going to look at this document. And I want to show the clipboard protection. So we know the documents. It won't let me take a document from a corporate app and open it somewhere else. But it also won't let me even take things on the clipboard from somewhere else. So let's say I select a portion of this and say copy. Simple enough. If I go back to Outlook, close that down. If I did a new email, I could be in here and I could paste that content. And it's still in the clipboard. I can really do anything I want with that. So we go back again. There it is. I'll copy. Now let's go to a non-corporate app. Let's go to Docs. And I'll create a new document. And I'll go in here. And here, paste. Nothing's happening. It will not let me share that clipboard between my corporate app and my personal application. So it's going to protect that as well. So I hope that was useful. Kind of showed that protection of data and documents between the corporate and personal apps, and really what that whole management experience looks like. Thank you.